one name on the face of this earth that can keep you out of hell. It's not Baptist, it's not Methodist, it's not Presbyterian, it's not Catholic, it's not Jew. There's just one name that can keep you out of hell, and it's the name of Jesus.
Lighten up, Francis.
This is Ask an Atheist, and I'm your host, Mike Smithgall. What you're about to hear is a clip from my full conversation with Annette Tannian Brandt. If you haven't heard the full episode, go check it out. It's really worth it. Don't forget to subscribe and share the show if you like what you heard. Let's go. How long have you been an atheist? And I'll let you decide what that meant, whether it was your first starting to question, therefore agnostic, or when you said, no, I'm fairly convinced of this.
Yeah, I think you kind of alluded to the fact that it's sometimes not this like, there's not like you wake up one day and you're like, oh, well, I'm atheist now. You know, it is a journey. So, and it happens sometimes gradually. So it really was, the very first seed was my brother he was probably like 8 years old and I was 10. And it was like a church function. We were going to go together and he's like, I'd rather not. And I'm like, what? You're not going to go to the whatever, fill in the blank for whatever the event was. And he's like, that's all bullshit, right? And I was like, what? No, I'm going to go save some souls. Okay, bye. Right. And then, fast forward to college is really when I felt like I started to see and then couldn't unsee something. Yeah. When I really started to grow up and start asking myself some of these really hard questions about what do I value? What's important to me? What do I believe in? What do I like to do? What kind of people do I like to surround myself with? All of these questions that people grapple with as you grow up. But yeah, it was a philosophy class as a freshman. I didn't know what I was in for with that professor, but he asked all sorts of, just mind-blowing questions that I walked out of there every class. And I would go home. My dad was pretty religious growing up. He's a Christian. I was raised in a Christian household. Right. And then, it was in these college courses and I would come home and be like, man, he asked me this question. I just can't stop, juggling it around in my mind. I can't grasp. The cognitive dissonance was really, really powerful at that time. And so the first moment that I think, the brain went fully was the day that we discussed free will. Of course, a bunch of people he asked the question, do we have free will? And this is a Catholic university. So if you can imagine, many of the students said oh, yeah. Of course we have free will. Duh, the Bible tells us that we do. God tells us that we do. And that at that moment was the only thing that ever, existed in my consciousness. Because that's what I was taught growing up. And so listening to the conversation that, kind of came up in the room of people basically regurgitating, I think, a lot of what we learn in Sunday school or whatever. And then, but he said, also, do you think, because, if the Bible is true, then the world is also predetermined. The end of the world is also predetermined. Right. Yeah. And so Armageddon has already been planned and the outcome is decided. So how can we have both free will to choose our own path and yet at the same time have the path already decided? So God created us. He knows us. He made us the way that we are. He knows how things will end. He made it that way. And also we have the choice to make that different. But how do we make it different than God intended it to be or made it to be? Right. And so I couldn't wrap my head around that. And so that was really the beginning of the end for me was.
That free will has always been a little bit of a sticky issue with me as well, because like you said, if it's all predetermined, and we see that from our believer friends and just for all of you that are watching, we're not anti-Christian or because we're living in the United States. I mean, everyone we know is Christian for the most part. Our families and stuff like that.
It's the dominant culture.
It's a dominant
Whether
culture.
you are or not. It's
It would be silly to be like anti, because I'd be anti the rest of the world.
I would have no friends. No. The atheist group.
Yeah, just my atheist meetings that we have every month.
Right.
But yeah, that idea that everything is predetermined, because people will always say, God has a plan for you, and He knew you in the womb. There's that phrase, I'm probably misquoting it, but from the Bible, and He knows what's going to happen, because there's this, and sometimes you can say this is good. I think the people that believe they use this as a comfort is that He's not going to give you anything that you can't handle, because He knows He has a plan for your life. That's all well and good until you say, but I also have free will. So how does that deviate from His plan? My friend Aaron, who's a member of this group, he gave me that one time when we were talking about prayer. And he said, the funny thing about prayer is you're asking God to change all of His plans based on your particular whim of the day.
And He's perfect, isn't He?
So, plan.
Right.
And you're like, by the way,
He's perfect. He's
I need this job over here, not there. God, if you're listening, could you go ahead and screw everything up your plan?
You saw this going on over here.
Right.
Like you are powerful enough to see what I do naked. And I'm just not sure if are you paying attention to this struggle that I'm having here? And could you possibly help with these starving children, or the wildfires that are burning out of control, or this earthquake that destroyed and killed 5,000 people, or it's just.
I know you're busy with all that.
Right.
This job has 3 weeks vacation. I don't know if you knew that. So that's the one I really want. So, and I'm being flippant about it, but it was when Aaron put it in the context, like, okay, that's a good point about, and it's the same thing with the free will. I'm asking for this all-knowing, all-seeing creator to make a tweak based on whatever I've decided. Now, there's another philosophical thing where there is no free, even if outside of religion, there's another philosophy that you have no free will, anything, because everything you're going to do is predetermined by everything you've ever done. You know what I mean? Because any step I make next is based on every piece of input I've ever had. And it's almost, I have no ability to change where I'm going. I think I do, but I don't. That's a different philosophy, and there's a name for it. I can't remember it, but yeah. So, okay. Now, maybe I ask you, you mentioned one thing. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I'm just curious. Your brother gave you that. Was he your older brother? He was only 8 and you were littler?
He's my younger brother, actually.
Wow. So your little brother. So is he an atheist today?
He is. Oh yeah. Okay. Like, no question.
I've met him once. That's right.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he's definitely he has a very kind of dry and also flippant sense of humor as well, and so for example, he just we'll talk about like, hey, what are you doing for Easter? And he's like, oh, I don't know why I should celebrate the fact that we that the state murdered somebody, and he'll just say things like, so he just cuts right to the heart, and so I think it's helped me in some ways feel a little less crazy for just even questioning some of the things, like once I started. However, at the beginning of my journey in college, like that kind of part of my atheism coming to Jesus moment with my atheism, my brother was in the military. He was in the service, and he was in Kuwait. He was like gone for periods of time. And so I actually didn't have a lot of contact with him, during that little pocket of time that I really became. And so it was funny because then when we really reconnected, when he was done with basic training and some of his like more intense training that he went through, when he dipped back into the family life, he was like, oh, wait, I can say this stuff now and you're not going to give me time. And I'm like, I'm there, brother. I see it. And he's like, see.
I hope you're enjoying today's discussion. Be sure to check out the reading list and resource links we put together in the show notes for this segment. In particular, I'd like to draw your attention to this great book. It's called Faith Unraveled by Rachel Held Evans. It's a candid and thought-provoking memoir about questioning evangelical certainty, wrestling with doubt, and rebuilding a more flexible and authentic faith. Rachel's journey is deeply relatable to anyone navigating deconstruction and trying to find meaning on the other side. This would be a great follow-up to today's discussion. Now, let's get back to Annette.
You know?
So were you went to Catholic University, I always kind of use this term because I think of myself, I grew up what I call casual Christian. Like I went to church on Sundays and, we would pray at like big sort of family events like an Easter or whatever. But I was raised Episcopal, which is a pretty casual religion versus where I grew up in Florida. Later, when we moved to Florida, it's a lot of Southern Baptist, which is a little more strict. It's not the right word. I don't mean to use it that way, but it's much more involved. It's more forward, than we were as Episcopal.
The expectations on you are higher to act and do certain
So
things.
were you the same? I mean, how strong, I guess is a good word. How strong was your Christianity and your involvement? Even though you went to a Catholic university, a lot of kids go to Catholic school and it's just because that's a good it's a good school that's not public, right?
Yeah.
Or was yours more of a philosophical, like, no, I'm really, really interested in being...
For me, it was like out of necessity. It was close by. So I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. So it was in like the Woodridge and Bolingbrook area. And I went to Lewis University. It's a LaSallian Catholic university in like Romeoville. So, pretty just really close. And so out of necessity, I knew I had to go to college in order to get out of like the really poor economic situation that I was in with my nuclear family. However, it was they offered me a scholarship. I got an academic scholarship and I also got a swimming scholarship while I was there. So it really helped to didn't fund the whole thing, but it really helped to supplement a private school education for me in a way that was more affordable, like a state school would have been.
Right.
And so that I felt like was like a no-brainer. The fact that it was Catholic wasn't that wasn't part of really my decision to go there. It almost swayed me away from it, but I knew because my parents both grew up Catholic and they had very bad experiences growing up in the Catholic Church. And so they purposely put us kids, I have a brother and a sister, the three of us in public school all growing up because we're public school or Catholic school, and they had bad experiences. So they're like, nuns making them eat I don't know. My mom always used to talk about they used to serve fried bologna sandwiches all the time. And my dad used to talk about how they would hit them with rulers and force them to line up for confession. And he's like, oh, yeah, it's anonymous. Yeah, right. He's like, they line us up by class in alphabetical order. That shit ain't anonymous. Like, you can't fool me for a second. So when I chose where to go to school, my dad said to me, like, I purposely avoided Catholic school your whole fucking life, and now the one time that you get a chance to choose what school you go to fucking Catholic school. And then that's ironically where I became an atheist, which is also so funny.
That is ironic. I do wonder how many people, well, we say this within sort of atheist community, that the surest way to be an atheist is to start reading the Bible. You know what I mean? So it's curious that this professor at a religious university is the one that really sparked you to turn the other way. I mean, it's not an uncommon story for a lot of us. It's a lot of us, a priest or a minister or someone said something and we're like, wait, I don't think that makes sense. And then it's just like a waterfall of questions, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, and he challenged us on so many other issues too. We didn't just talk about religion in that class. Like, it was such a gripping class for so many reasons. We would talk about, for example, like feminism. He brought up one day, like, do you feel like you have equal rights and equal opportunity as a woman? And I was kind of like, I guess. Like, I didn't know how to answer that question.
as a kid.
I never really thought about it. Like my parents very purposely tried to steer certain things, like we all took out the trash and we all did the dishes and we all helped with, like the domestic in the house. And like they tried to reduce those kinds of like gender expectations and labels on us. However, it shows up everywhere in society, and especially in the church, where like all the elders are all men, and usually white men, to be honest. And so, it was, I don't know. So when he asked me about feminism, or asked me about equality, I was kind of stumped, and he went around the room, asked a whole bunch of people, and people were like, well, the law says that we're supposed to get equal pay, but do we actually get equal pay? And that's just the tip of the iceberg. It was like this whole, so he brought up a lot of different topics that were just thought provoking. And he wasn't teaching us what to think. He was presenting us with exercises, like these thought experiments, and we had to see them through to the end to say, like, what is it that I actually believe? What makes sense to me? And let's actually sit down with no agenda to like, here's the end point that we want to get to. It's just let it run its course and let's see where it goes. And so he changed my life. He really did.
Thanks for listening to Ask an Atheist. If you've enjoyed the episode, consider subscribing and leaving a review. You can find the full interview and more clips on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.